the founder of Gray Bull Rescue. Bryan Stern is with us. You can learn more about his organization, the work he does rescuing Americans, and we're going to talk about that in a bit too at graybullrescue.org. Bryan, thanks so much for coming in, and we wanted to have you on to talk about a whole bunch of different things, but let's start with your thoughts on the Trump assassination attempt, especially from a security perspective.
Yeah, clearly a failure, right?
Yeah.
On a lot of levels. A lot of people are saying, good news. The president, the president survived.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a lot of luck talking.
Yeah.
A lot of luck.
Literally just turning his head at the right moment.
I was on Trace Gallagher last night and on Fox, and we did this panel about divine intervention or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not a religious guy in life. But this incident kind of makes you a believer.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird moments. So, the shooter is a 20-year-old punk kid.
Yep.
A disenfranchised youth. He was bullied. And
right.
All the mental psychosis.
Literally
stuff.
was called, like they used to call him the school shooter. Like he didn't actually commit a school shooting, but he fit that profile so well. That was his nickname.
Right. So, he got to within the shot was 143 yards away with an AR-15, a civilian M4. Which, just for perspective, if you're a secretary in the Florida Army National Guard, you qualify with that same gun at 300 yards every quarter. So for perspective, double the distance if you're a cook in the Army.
Yeah.
Right. Let alone if you're an infantry guy or a sniper or a whatever. So
it's a 9-iron. It's a pitching wedge.
Yeah, I mean, it really is close.
Yeah.
Really is close. So, I shoot 5-inch groups, 6-inch groups, 7-inch groups at that distance. Those are headshots, sustained. So, the failures that led into that are many. What you'll learn through the after action review is a lot of it came down to communication.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that the Secret Service director came out with was, one of the questions is, well, how come you didn't have a team on the roof?
Let me get to her response. Let me play that real quick. In her interview, Kim Cheadle's interview with ABC News, here was that back and forth.
Should that roof have been secure, period?
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
So there are a lot of questions about that.
That just sounds like such a BS excuse.
Well, let's just dissect that for a minute. And I have, when these things happen, hindsight's always 2020. That's the way it always is, right? It's just life. So she's saying that there wasn't a team on the roof because it was a sloped roof and it was a bad spot. Well, it was good enough for a 20-year-old punk kid to shoot from.
Yeah.
So a team with training and resources and all kinds of things, that dog doesn't really hunt. That doesn't track at all, because clearly it's a good firing position because a kid got a headshot.
Right. Well, and they also passed the buck from the Secret Service to saying that was the responsibility of the local law enforcement. So then why was she even making the decision about whether or not to put someone on the roof?
Well, so even before then, she says the building was secured from the inside.
Yeah.
You can't secure a rooftop from the inside.
Right.
It just mathematically, the laws of physics are finite. So
yeah,
there's
just so much wrong.
So that doesn't make sense. Now, what's going to come out is there was a team, I think it was Pennsylvania State ERT, and they're good guys. They were in the building.
Yeah.
Which adds insult to injury. So
they were literally underneath him,
8 feet below him, because it's not a very tall building.
No,
this isn't a skyscraper where he's on the 23rd floor and they were on the 19th floor, right? They were 8 feet below him. So the way it went down was probably something like this: people saw a kid, people saw him climbing up and doing the thing, and they went to Officer Snuffy, the local cop, right? Who's not state, he's some Bethel, Pennsylvania. Officer, there's a guy with a gun on the roof. And he probably said, yeah, lady, it's okay. The scene is secure,
right.
Pump the brakes, whatever. And they go, no, you won't believe it. Oh my goodness. And then he looks and he sees from a distance, right? He says, wow, that is kind of funny. There's a sniper on the roof. He gets on the radio, calls, none of the radios talk to each other, right? There's 8 different elements that we know about providing security at this one teeny tiny event. You have Secret Service, the sniper teams, private security, event security, the president's detail, Pennsylvania State Police SWAT, and local cops.
It's a lot of coordination.
Okay, and no one's radios work.
Yeah, a lot of ways for that to go wrong.
Nothing works, right? So, which is amazing because we can see golf balls from outer space.
Right.
So we can see golf balls from outer space. We put a man on the moon in the 60s, but we can't figure out how to get, the radios to work.
And why isn't there a drone overhead?
Good question. Now, what's important to understand with the president, or with former President Trump, he's the former president.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think of the Secret Service providing security, we think of presidential level security. He's not the president.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have Air Force One. He doesn't get HMX-1. The full Secret Service protection package, which is millions of dollars and dozens and dozens and dozens of people, former presidents, even presidential candidates, don't get that level of protection. Standard don't get that level.
Yeah.
When former President Obama travels, it's 2 cars.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 12 guys, and that's the show. So now he's running for president. He's also picked a fight with a lot of people. He killed Soleimani. He killed Baghdadi. So he's not your typical protectee. So he gets more by the virtue of who he is and the threat. And that's the important thing to understand with this. This is where the real failure is. When we do these things, we go to assess risk. And risk is a mathematical computation, right? It's threat times vulnerability times asset equals risk.
You only have so many resources.
And you gotta game the game.
Yeah.
So the asset is the asset. He is what he is. That's not changing, right? He's not a building where you can fortify it or pick and choose what you're going to protect. There's only one thing to protect. That's him. So that's a constant. That's a constant. The vulnerabilities are based off the venue. Is it inside? Is it outside? Are there high level? Is there high ground? Is there low ground? And what you do is you try and minimize the vulnerabilities to the extent that you can. And how do you figure that out? Based off the threat. So we say, all right, we're in Bethel, Pennsylvania.
Right.
What's the most likely thing that's going to hurt my asset? In this case, 2 big things, maybe a third, right? Maybe a third. Either somebody sneaks a gun or a knife or something into the crowd and does a close target hit, right? Getting close to the stage, which is why there's armor there. That's why there's security there. That's why there's space, right? You can't touch the podium, right? So we do things to minimize that vulnerability as it relates to the threat. The other thing is you would say a high-powered rifle. And what you do is you say, all right, well, what's the most common rifle in the United States of America? An AR-15. Maximum effective range of an AR-15 on a point target is 625 meters. Googleable, right? Everyone knows. An AR-15, if you're good, can actually get pushed out to 1,000 yards. So you say, all right, well, probably I don't have an Olympic-level shooter coming. Let's game the game. Let's say 700 meters, that's our kill zone. Yeah. Let's protect 700 meters from him in every possible direction. And the third one might be a drone hit. Somebody flies a drone into him or something, which is what happened to Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, right? Those would be if I was doing the advance and I'm trying to figure out, well, where do I put my resources? That's how I do the analysis.
And that's what's so outrageous. There weren't that many buildings.
Number one, there's not that many buildings.
And that one was the one that you would do it from. If you look at the aerial picture, that's the building.
It's the good spot, number one. Number two, it's actually not even the highest spot. There's an adjacent rooftop there that's another 8 or 9 feet higher, and nobody was on that roof either. And that roof was not sloped. Now, I tell you what happened. It was 1,000 degrees outside. It was hot. People were passing out from heat exhaustion. It was making the news how many people were getting heat stroke. It was very hot. All the cops are wearing armor and all their stuff, which sucks. They're in black or multicam or whatever, which is terrible. And they were like, you know what? We can see the president from inside. We're in here. All they had to do was secure the entrances and exits to that building. Put a guy outside, would have been fine. Or put a drone up. Use technology.
Right.
But this is at 143 yards. It is if somebody would have climbed the rooftop with an iPhone to film the president, that's still a fail from a security perspective. That is still a fail. A kid walking to a presidential level venue with an AR-15 assault rifle, right? Also a problem. Walking in the crowd. Walking in the crowd. Forget that he got to the rooftop. Right. And
got a shot off. Multiple shots.
So what happens is the people report it, the cops hear it, they kind of blow it off, they kind of go and look, And the real failure comes in, the real catastrophic fail, is the kid was actually contacted, what we call contacted. A cop went up to the roof and said, "Hey, you, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And the kid pointed the gun at the cop. At that point, that cop should have smoked him. That's it.
Yeah.
He's clearly not a police officer. He's clearly not in uniform. Sniper teams always work in pairs. There's always a sniper and a spotter. He's alone. There's about a dozen indicators of the subject that tell me that he's not a police officer.
Yeah.
I see a kid. I see a gun. I see the president. The kid's going home in a body bag.
Yeah.
If I don't see his hands immediately, you point a gun at me on the streets of Florida.
Right.
You're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
Right. So when that happens, when that moment happens, that critical moment, and the cop retreated, he gets on the radio, and it took a moment for him to go to dispatch to go to the command center.
That's all
command
the
center
gunman
talk to Secret
needed.
Service.
Yep.
Secret Service to the snipers. They're on a different radio system very often, all the time. They're on team comms.
Yep.
That 45 seconds
Oh, yeah, it's plenty of time.
is when everything happens.
Yeah, that's all it took, and
Insane.
then we saw what we saw.
That's
all
it.
right.
So that's how it happened.
So tonight at the Republican National Convention, the theme is Make America Strong Again. It's going to be a big focus on foreign policy. Yesterday, we learned about an Iranian plot to kill former President Donald Trump. Apparently, this was passed along to the Secret Service in advance of Saturday's event in Pennsylvania. So what we saw was allegedly enhanced security, which is hard to believe. What do you make of that development?
It's not news that the Iranians want to kill President Trump.
Right.
That's not news. He killed Salmani. They've been very angry ever since then.
Who was, really like the mastermind in terms of their operations in the Middle East, right?
Yeah, he ran IRGC, so he's a celebrity. He's like a General Petraeus or a General Schwarzkopf.
Yeah.
He's a kind of a household name.
And now he's a martyr.
And now he's a martyr. And Donald, President Trump is very proud that he sent him to heaven.
Yeah, as he should be.
Right? So, very, very proud, very happy about it, talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
President Trump has never expressed any remorse.
Yeah.
He's never said, "I felt really bad doing it." It was the right thing to do, but I was conflicted because it's a human life. He didn't say that. He said, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Right.
So
now, there's no connection. I do want to point out again, we don't know of any connection between this 20-year-old gunman and Iran or anything like that. But I think the key point is that the Secret Service should have been on even higher alert.
Well, this is the thing, is the Secret Service gets dozens and dozens and dozens of threats about former presidents and current presidents every single day. So it's not an, oh my God, can you believe that the Iranians want to, they've been very open. The Iranians have been very open about it, that they hold Donald Trump responsible. And under their system of justice, we will bring him to justice, which is a nice way of saying we're going to kill him. So it's not very cosmic to understand this thing. What's important in the context of the Iran threat stream and this kid is the Iranians are pros. They train for this. They're just like us. They spend time. They spend time on the range. They're very combat hardened. They've killed a lot of people. They're very seasoned. They're good at what they do. A professional, mildly trained bad guy would have succeeded.
Yeah.
Would have succeeded. This is a 20-year-old punk kid who's a kind of a loser in life.
It was about a quarter of an inch from doing what he set out to do.
Yeah. So a pro, if there would have been a pro or even a kind of sort of pro, to somebody who just would have practiced a little bit more, even if this kid would have practiced a little bit more, we'd be having we'd be planning for the Trump funeral right now.
Yeah.
So the threat stream by itself is what it is. It happens all the time. Lots of people make threats. Lots of governments make threats. The Russians try and kill people. They successfully kill people. The Iranians kill people all the time. We kill people all the time. The Israelis do targeted hits.
Yeah.
Governments kill people, and they kill their enemies. That's what happens. In the context of this overall, the last couple of days, what's important to understand is that a pro would have succeeded, number one, and it's not like they're not paying attention.
Yeah.
It's right. So the same way I've been doing a lot of media on this incident, the same way we've dissected every little thing, and there's the video of the female Secret Service agent who can't get her gun in the holster, and all these little nuances, and what does this mean? And there's the lady with the black hat who doesn't seem to react, and everyone's dissecting all this stuff. I promise you, there's a whole bunch of Iranian bad guys that are sitting around in a thing with a bunch of Iranian intelligence guys saying, "Oh, interesting. Well, this is how it all happened. This was the vulnerabilities that were exploited."
It's all on camera.
In the world of social media, this is the first presidential hit.
I was thinking about
in the
that
world
yesterday.
Of iPhones, in the world of iPhones.
Is it going to be helpful to help us figure out exactly what happened?
That sword cuts both directions, right? So
great point.
There's been if JFK was assassinated today because of iPhones, we would know who killed him.
Right.
We only have one very blurry video of that incident.
The Zapruder film would be a video
of
many from many different angles, and it would be we would know. Yeah. We would know. So
and they're not just watching that. They're watching the response on the part of the Secret Service director. They're watching President Biden and his response, which
so when we talk about in the context of the convention of Make America Strong Again, this is not a good look for the law enforcement community, for the national security community. A presidential assassination is a very, very, very big deal.
Yeah,
it's a huge deal. There's only been a few of them for a reason. It's a very big deal. It especially if this was President Biden, it would still be. If this was anybody, if this was former President Obama, if this was former President Bush, an assassination, on U.S. soil, is a homegrown, not homegrown, a punk kid, a pro, doesn't really matter. The impact of this, as we see, right, where everyone's talking about it, it's the talk of the town. It's reshaped President Trump's entire campaign. It's reshaped Biden's messaging. So this is big impact stuff. In the context of Make America Strong Again, none of this is good.
Yeah. No.
None of this is good.
Do you think part of what we saw with this assassination attempt and the failed response was complacency, this idea that, it's never going to happen here? I mean, that we've got this type of stuff, it doesn't happen anymore.
I think there's a lot of that. I mean, we went to go look and figure out when was the last time a Secret Service counter sniper engaged a target.
Good question.
We couldn't figure it out.
Really?
Well, there haven't been that many.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
No,
right?
You're right.
So, there's been lots of close calls. Lots of arrests have always been made at different conventions, different rallies and stuff.
Yeah.
But we haven't had even when Ronald Reagan got shot, John Hinckley shot Ronald Reagan. Right? Reagan actually wasn't shot by Hinckley. It was a ricochet bullet. Hinckley actually missed, right? And he was 10 feet away. Even that wasn't a sniper sniper scenario. So,
and you could see in that video the sniper, he looks up, and I can only imagine, you don't want. It could have been somebody who was just on the roof to get a better vantage point of Trump to see the rally.
Well, and don't forget, he's looking at it. The sniper. So you got to think about it from a sniper perspective. He's looking through his scope, right? And you have a very narrow field of view. And you get a report that there's a guy on the roof, that there's a guy with a gun in Building 2. Well, you've been briefed that there are snipers at Building 2.
So you don't know if it's one of yours.
Yeah.
It could be Pennsylvania State Police. I mean, fake, misreports happen at every one of these events. Every one of there's always fake bombs and suspicious packages. There's all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like, all right, let me get on my glass, and it's probably when he's looking through his glass, he's thinking it's probably the other sniper team that somebody reported in. This is probably stupid. Wait a minute. Whoa.
And that was almost what it looked like. Yeah.
That's what happens.
Boom, one shot, and he took him out.
And he goes, holy cow, holy cow. And the shooter engages, and then they lit him up.
Yeah.
So they did, I've been in these positions on, through a set of binoculars trying to understand what I'm looking at. And you don't have the benefit of saying, excuse me, sir.
Right.
What are you doing?
You're 300, 400 yards away trying to read the tea leaves of what's going on.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is inconsistent with what it should be, right? So it's you have to do some calculus, and so they did a great job. The snipers did a great job to see. Everyone did once everyone figured out that there's a bad guy on the roof, lots of people did lots of really good things. But the reality is, I mean, there's all kinds of mistakes that were made. The egress routes were screwed up. Where the spare vehicle was, where the motorcade was not in the right spot. That's why they stayed there and sheltered him.
Yeah.
They had to bring the truck up. That's a violation of everything I know to be true from an executive protection. You always have your wheels close.
Right.
Always.
Get them out quick.
Get off the X. They stay there. Everyone's like, well, why did they keep him there? It must have been staged. Well, they kept him there because there was nowhere for him to go. They had to bring the truck in. There's a really crazy video of them trying to ram a fence, trying to get to the shooter.
I saw that one. Yeah.
Right.
That's insane.
Like number one, have a pair of bolt cutters. Right. Number two, 3 attempts to knock down a fence is kind of weak sauce. It's not exactly an armored fence. Right. And more importantly, that was actually a tertiary egress route. So why is that gate locked in the first place? You put 3 cars there so that if you have to go, they move out of the way very quickly, but nobody can come in.
Yeah.
And there's ways to do this, and a lot of those ways weren't followed. That all smacks of planning, bad planning.
Incompetence.
And also we're in Bethel, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen here.
So much of this, if we were in the South Bronx.
Exactly.
When he went to the South Bronx, all the bells and whistles and toys were there because it's the South Bronx.
Yeah.
Right?
Makes sense.
We're in nowhere, Pennsylvania. In the heart of Trump country.
Yep.
Right? And this is how you assess stuff.
Yeah.
You say, well, what's the likelihood? We have different kinds of methodology to figure out what to do with this stuff, and that's very much how you're like, well, what's the likelihood that we're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Trump country, in the middle of a field? It's 1,000 degrees outside. Are there going to be a gajillion protesters here? Probably not, because it's hot.
Exactly.
And guess what? There weren't any protesters. So there's a lot of analysis that goes into this stuff, and then it has to be executed. There were failures on the analysis side, clearly, in the advance and the pre-planning. And then there was a little bit of failure in the execution.
Definitely.
In the response part, they did pretty good. They got on him right away. But lest we not forget, the shooter connected with the president. A bullet hit the president.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
Period. So this is like, a failed assassination attempt. It's failed because he's alive. But from a I get to shoot people perspective, it was successful. So, the complacency, Secret Service, it's like the air marshals, right? The air marshals spend a lot of time. They're the best shots in the world. One of my best friends is an air marshal, and he can outshoot anybody I know. But the reality is they don't get in. When was the last time an air marshal drew his gun and blew somebody away in an airplane?
It's true.
Never happens. So they're trained, but actual experience, because it doesn't happen too often.
Right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that often.
Last thing I want to ask you about real quick, people who want to support the work you're doing rescuing Americans. You just got back from Lebanon, so you're constantly conducting these missions all around the world. Tell us how they can do that.
GrableRescue.org. We are entirely donor funded. We launched to Lebanon. The fighting increased. There was a rumor, a big threat stream that I think still does happen. The Israelis, Hezbollah, which runs Lebanon to a large extent, is rumored to have a lot of munitions at the airport. The Israelis said, we're going to hit those munitions. Hezbollah and Israel are at war with each other. When that happens, the airport will stop to function. They're not going to put holes in the runway, but there's so much munitions and stuff reported to be there that it would render the airport not functional. The U.S. Navy moved the USS Wasp and an entire amphibious readiness group into the region to do what's called a NEO, a non-combatant evacuation operation, which is like a large evacuation. We've learned through experience that those never go well. And people get stuck, and people are in hard places, and Americans get trapped, and that's really where we come in, where we work where the government can't, right? So we deployed. Thankfully, the Israelis did not hit there's only one airport in the whole country, so if you take that out, it turns into boats. Maritime operation, which is very hard, very complicated. So we went to go set conditions for that, praying it didn't happen. Hasn't happened yet. I think it does happen, though. So we went over thinking we were going to do ops, but really it turned into much more preparation, which, again, just like the Trump assassination, preparation matters.
Yeah.
One of my famous lines that I always say, one of my things that I tell my crew all the time, Noah built the ark before the flood. Before the flood. it is really hard to build a boat in the rain, right? So setting things up in advance is very important. But we are entirely donor funded, and my team and I, we deploy all over the place. We were in the heart of Hezbollah country, walking amongst the Indians, doing the thing, planning and doing meetings and coordinating things and figuring out where we're going to go, where we're not going to go, where we can get people in and out, Americans that get stuck. But GraybullRescue.org is where you can go to donate. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all those things that I don't know how to use.
Definitely go check all of that out, because the work you're doing, vital, and I know you need our support, and I'm sure our listeners are going to step up. GraybullRescue.org is the website. Bryan, thank you so much for coming in and offering all that insight and expertise. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Love being here.